everybody. Welcome. Welcome. Wayward Media presents Because Cannabis. My name is B.C. Wehman. That's Dustin Kava, wherever he is, one of those boxes over there. Hey there, Dustin. How you doing today?
Doing good today. Doing really good. A little under the weather this weekend, but you know what? I'm starting to shape up, and it's good. I think
but it is a Friday, right? It's the end of the week. It's Friday. It's fired up. That means reset week, right? We look forward to this time because whatever ails you, whatever is going on in your personal life, like if you subscribe, if you right now go and click that button. I always make that sound effect for some reason. You click the button and subscribe to the channel. You get the notification of when we're going to go live on Fridays, every Friday, because cannabis is your friend. We're there for you, talking open, fun, today, I think, conversations about cannabis. And that's the case. Whatever went wrong that week, whatever's been going on, tough times, bad times, right? The dog died, whatever's happening. That's a pretty severe thing. I don't know if we can cheer you up from that, but we'll try. We'll talk open, we'll talk fun, light it up, have a fun time with us. Today's show is going to be a good one. Wayward Media, wayward.media. Check us out. Follow us socially at MeetWM, MEETWM. Don't forget live shows. Live shows, well, maybe sometimes pre-recorded, but Fridays. Every Friday, brand new show of Because Cannabis. And then on Mondays, we have new audio shows. It's about 2 weeks behind. So if you're listening on audio, definitely check out the YouTube channel. You can see the video, see some of the silly faces that we're making. Check out Dustin's usual look of black shirt, black hat, and beard in my clearly bizarre colored polo shirt. The camera lighting is off. This is like a really fluorescent green, and it looks like a mint yellow. And I don't know if that's a real color in there. Anyway, Dustin, I'm fired up. I've had a lot of coffee. I think we're going to need it for our guests today. We've had 2 weeks. 2 weeks of conversations, 2 weeks of me and you chitting and chatting about cannabis. Today we got a guest. Today we got a trademark named guest. I've never had a trademark named guest before. TDOG, Todd Pearl. I'm excited for this one. You excited?
I'm extremely excited. We got to meet him a little bit earlier before the show, and I have to say, this is going to be a blast.
Well, let's do that then. Let's just hit that part. If we think it's going to be, well, look at, there he is right there. T-Dog, the artist, is here. Todd Pearl. Oh man, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us, Todd. How are you today, man?
It's a pleasure. It really is a pleasure. I almost forgot that this was happening, and you sent me a little reminder.
I do my due diligence.
Exactly. But no, it's good to be in the house. Absolutely.
It's something to manage, right? You have your whole like existence, right? And you're there and you're doing artwork and you're promoting cannabis and you're working and doing these things, which we'll talk about. But then there's this weird part for people like yourselves who have a whole business is you have to do the promotional and you have to do the marketing and you got to get out there. And then you have to make these weird random scheduled, whether interviews, you sit down with High Times or something like that on a phone or video interviews. You're someone who works, and we'll talk about what you do, T-Dog, in graphic art and putting out there, illustrating strains. Do you like this stuff though? I mean, do you like making appearances and doing the marketing and promoting yourself? Or are you more the artistic type who says, just leave me alone and let me create? Like, what's your vibe when it comes to that?
I think you hit a bunch of points there. I mean, my focus, excuse me, my focus was to be the artist because I always was the designer. I mean, that was part of how I made a living, but I was always the illustrator. And then as times went on, I just doing more of what I want to do. I'm still bringing in the other services, but I'm really making this transition to be more the artist. I mean, but the great thing has happened since I've come into this community is I can't help myself, but by helping the community with my art. It's like one thing to draw a pretty picture and everybody loves it and says it's badass, but when I get a call, I'll give you a great example, and it's become, I can count them on two hands, where military vets who, where cannabis has basically saved their lives, not only as far as a medicine, but also a livelihood. And they've come to me, and I've had the honor to now take in all their information and create this brand and they can put on their door to be happy to be in the business. And I'm loving that. And if I can help I always say when I finish the logo, I say, well, now you guys got to get serious about this.
I love it. I love it. I mean, we actually, It is, and it helps to get serious. I like working with new brands, startups, and stuff like that, and breaking the, the third wall right here is like we're actually in the web development and creation. I got the green screen over here. We got all the lights to the left. We got everything here that helps us create for these brands. But it's like that logo helps instill the story, the everything, the motto, the message, what you're going to be in the future, what you were in the past, what your biggest assets, your employees. It literally almost says everything all in one statement, and then allows you to actually tell them the story. And so, for me, I'm a developer first, then designer later. And so I like hearing the design first perspective from you in that case of like, that's the hardest part, is creating the logo for me, but it's the most important part of the process in everything that we do later on down the line.
Well, it's just relationship. What I'm loving is that I'm listening, and this is aside from the canvas world. This is just being an artist. And if you're commissioned to do work, just listen to the person, where they're coming from. And I tell them, and that's what kind of gets us all going. I go, listen, this is going to be you. I'm going to become in a sense, your glorified pencil, because you have a vision and an idea, and there's who you are. And I take all that, I just put it in the mixer, and then I put my TDOG flavor to it, and it's just been a real happy a ride with helping people, because I'm really not having an issue with, and maybe that's part of the medicine too, is because it makes me listen more to what people want.
It is
As
interesting,
opposed
right?
to being the artist thinking, I know what you need.
Yeah, no, but that's the fine line. We've had, oh my gosh, I mean, Dustin and I and some other people at Wayward Media, have had, because not arguments, like conversations, heated ones about what the logo should look like. And it becomes a thing that does represent it. And very often it tends to be this basic kind of just block work, right? Whether it's just letters and such. And you have, I want to say comic book style, but you have an artistic style, right? It's a very unique style. And I think you see it, whether it's something on like What's Your Strain, or whether it is on like towerpro.com, like your actual like work for other vendors. There's a artistic flair that you have in there. Do you like to incorporate TDOG, the artist vibe, into everything? Or if someone said,
Oh no, that's what's become so great now. I'm not so much just the designer doing the bullet list and delivering what they want. They're coming to me because of what I create.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm trying to create a hybrid of who they are, what their vision is, and blend it with my madness. Because I'm not saying that I don't bring and I'll tell you a great example was the dank for Subcool. Let me see if I can get that in there.
Yeah.
Logo for Subcool, if I can get the lighting right. But was that he was so, and may he rest in peace. He's been gone a couple of years now. I can't believe it. But here's one of the top breeder growers of the community who loved my art. I had done some tribute stuff. We weren't even working together. I did an Agent Orange and what others? A couple others, and I sent it to him. And then we met at an event, and then he contracted me to design his work. So what I did was I came up with an idea. He had his idea what he wanted, and he was really insistent on it, and I was developing it. But then I thought, I'm hearing what he's saying, and I came up with this other idea. He didn't like it at first, but then all of a sudden he gravitated back to it because it was the right look for the whole thing. And so that explains this blend of what you want and the madness of me.
Is that more of you learned your lesson in the past of like the process of forcing your vision on someone else? Or is it just that you're too, like you've been around the block enough where you just don't even want to fucking argue anymore. And you're more in the line of like, listen, I'm going to let you mold this over for a bit. And then you come back to me in a couple days and tell me it's shit, but you aren't going to make a decision right now. And most of the time they come back and say, T-Dog's right.
Like
He's
that.
like, he actually had
Trust
more
T-Dog.
thought put behind this than I even do as the brand owner. And, yes, it is the correct way it is the right, direction for the brand.
Yeah,
I love that.
And it's bringing, and it's also a term that I consistently use. I have a bunch of tag phrases, but good vibe tribe. I mean, that's what I'm looking for as I've gotten older, is now I want to work with people I want to work with.
Yes.
There has to be a vibration there initially, or it's not. Yeah, of course I'm in it to pay the bills and keep my wife happy, but that's, if you lived alone, just draw.
Yeah, who knows? We'd be chaos if we all lived alone. I have who knows what's going on back there. And so one of the reasons I learned about you, Todd, was TDOG the artist, Todd Pearl. You exist in both worlds.
Wait, I got to give everybody the official.
All right, let's
Some
go.
people are like saying, how do you spell it? Is it DAWG? No, I'm a dog, DOG, but it's T to the D to the mother loving OG.
Oh, that's a vibe. That is a vibe, right? See, I don't have that.
It
vibe
is
about
the
me.
vibe.
I don't have that energy. I wish I had it. I don't have it in me to do that. That's
well, it used to be mother effing OG, but I decided to change it so everybody can hear it. So
it's more positive.
Mother
branding,
loving OG now.
It keeps you off the age restricted YouTube content page if you can do the mother loving. On What's Your Strain? That's with a Z. WATZYOUR strain. And so what I first found out about you, T-Dog, the artist, was these strains, cultivars, and you were doing visual imagery, basically, right? Like a visual imagery of an indica, of a name brand, of an Agent Orange, of a Purple Kush. And so you kind of had a goal to illustrate, and there's hundreds and hundreds of cultivars out there, to illustrate them. And so I'm trying to figure out, when anyone consumes it or think about it, what part about the strain triggers the artistic, right? Is it the taste? Is it the look? Is it the appeal? Do you just do the history, or how do you visually imagine a strain?
There's a lot of factors, and let's just go on a little bit of how this all came to be. I think it's a good story to tell. So a friend of mine, Mike, you out there, Mike, Farmer Mike, he was entering his grow in the Cannabis Cup. I think it was 2016, 2015. And I think it was early 2016. He came to me and he goes, dude, because he knew my art, he goes, will you design, I grew this Girl Scout cookie and I want some art for it when I enter it in the Cannabis Cup. I said, hell yes. So do I have that handy? I don't have it.
I think I'll find I can find that image and bring it up too, I think.
I should have the sticker close by anyways. There's so many stickers around everywhere. But the Girl Scout cookie was the first strain tribute design I did. And I did it for his entry into the Cannabis Cup. And he didn't win. He got an honorable mention. Very good grower, very good knowledge. And he came home after the cup and we started talking. And then just what you were saying there, BC, is I started thinking about all the strain names and my artistic head just exploded. And I said, wow, this is like a pool of creativity that will be never ending, doing strain designs. So I just came up with this idea and I started a Kickstarter just because my business was in full, in fact, that's one reason I'm T-Dog the artist, was because the Todd Pearl out in the Matrix. I've illustrated children's books, design logos for universities, high schools, colleges, Fortune 500 companies. So I didn't want the two worlds to necessarily overlap when they searched.
Oh, I get that completely.
But it's out of the bag. So and some of my clients know what I'm doing now. So and it's not funny. They're former clients because most of my world. See, we're pausing.
That's a little bit. That's right. Just keep going.
It'll happen sometimes.
It happens sometimes, right? We have this technique. We'll wait to see if Todd can hear us. I assume he can hear us. I don't know. I'm not sure. Seems normal to me on my end, actually. He might be a little frozen there. Sometimes, you never know where guests are, what part of the region they're in, vulnerable Wi-Fi. Who knows what's happening right there? We got Todd totally paused, totally frozen right now. It would not be the first show, Dustin, without technical difficulties. However, I think it's the first one when you're here. Last time with our Alan Katz, the wedding ganja DJ, cannabis DJ, Yeah, it was just me having to stall. So at least I get you to talk to a little bit about what
It
Todd's saying.
definitely makes it a little bit easier. I will say though that, he brought up a really good point about, that idea of separating. You talk about it all the time about coming out of your cannabis closet when it comes to, work. And in his same world, he's kind of transitioning to that exact effect, and made the transition actually, and quite successfully. And to me, I look up to those scenarios, not everything that I get to do I fully get to come out in the closet about how I do it and what I do and what industry I work with and what brands. And I don't know. I think it would be pretty awesome to work for a Fortune 500 company that's calling you, and on the side, they know that you're running this whole other operation that actually is, if they really sat down and think, they would be completely jealous of his life and what he gets to do for a living.
It's interesting, and hopefully we get Todd back, T-Dog the artist, What's Your Strain with a Z, and toddpearl.com. Hopefully we get him back, because it is something that I think about often, and it's a fine line because you want to be fully out there and you want to be all in. And I think about like stand-up comedians sometimes who tell like terrible, awful jokes about their mom and stuff, and yet their mom's in the audience. Or what was the other example I had? Oh, do you know who David Cho is, the artist? So yeah. David Cho, so he did the Facebook mural, right? And got really famous because he took the stocks instead of the thing. Great payday, became a millionaire because of it. So he gets hired to do like corporate gigs, but then he also has very NSFW imagery of cartoon and comic book characters doing like sexual acts online. But, and then he goes on like a Joe Rogan podcast and he's like, look, you know who I am. Like, it's all out there. Like, either take me or don't. And so, and he has, I don't know if any of us have this, but he has a little FU money, right, to be able to do that. So that's what I think. It's like you have that, and that must be nice. And we'll see if we can get Todd back in here. Are we able to bring him back in, Dustin? I think we might.
Sure are. Let's do another check with technical support.
Let's see.
Hey, Bob, can you get back in? Yeah. Okay. 2 seconds. Thanks. You should be coming in any minute.
The deep IT department that we have here at Wayward Media. Oh, look at that. Todd Pearl, T-Dog the artist, is back. We thought you actually someone found out. Yeah, we just assumed someone found out about your cannabis company already.
Like, I had to crank up my computer again.
Roll it back on. It's funny.
I had to hand crank the computer up again.
Get it going.
Another 10 minutes.
Sometimes on those cultivation farms, you go off the grid a bit. You never know. That sometimes is a penalty or is an issue with us, Todd, is we have people on like grow farms and such, and they have terrible Wi-Fi because they're out in the middle of nowhere. Absolutely. They're like, we have really palsy connection. We were talking a little bit about the separation.
I know exactly where I was at. If we want to jump back to it.
Yeah, go right back and tell the story about Mike.
Right. So I did a Kickstarter because I was curious, in 2016, saying, you know what, this could be, I just did it more as a focus group. So I asked for $5,000. I said, I'm on a mission to design every worthy strain known to mankind. And, and I gave out a good premium as far as stickers and posters and things like that. And I got funded. So when it got very popular and it got funded, so I just jumped on this train, and then it just built on itself, and it's evolved into a beautiful plant, because now, my world is very much cannabis as far as most of my, in fact, I want to thank my cannabis community for getting my family through these last 2 years. Because some of the other clients outside of the cannabis community just.
I mean, when the pandemic hit, marketing was one of the first things to go out the door in terms of a lot at first. And then they started seeing, oh no, we need to double step our marketing efforts. But half the time it was too late, or things had moved on, or a whole manner of things. But yeah, I could totally see. I could totally see that. That's crazy.
It was, and it became, and what my impression was that our industry, our world, people are traveling all over the place, and they stopped traveling. So all these businesses, people were at home thinking, what am I going to do? And they started probably thinking about their branding, because I didn't necessarily go out. People were just DMing me on Instagram. Oh, I need a logo. I need a logo. I need a logo, because they were planning ahead. And so thank you, because that was essential, because my wife got, she worked for a dental, she didn't work for 3 months and things like that. It was, so thank you, cannabis world. You lifted us well.
Since the Kickstarter, your Kickstarter had how many strains at first that they could choose from for some of the benefits?
Back to what BC was asking about, like how do I pick the strains? Well, I actually just kind of picked the 24 like top strains. I mean, you just name it. Here was one of my favorites, and this, in fact, this medicine right here.
Green crack. All right, good cultivar, good strain. I think
that was part of the inspiration of the first 24 strain designs. That medicine. So I definitely recommend it for the creative. So 24 over the first strains. You can name any of the top, classics, from Maui Wowie to Granddaddy Purple to Skunk to, there were a couple on there that aren't that popular anymore, like Three Kings, things like that.
When when you're picking that, was it a nostalgia thing, or was it seriously like, here's the list of the top 25? And then a secondary question is, now that you're actually doing this in such a more meaningful way than you thought, you're working with clients where what you're representing to them is much larger than something else, than the, just the nameless name of the strain, than the nostalgia of what you remember from back in the day or something like that. But now when it comes to picking the strains today, are you more gravitated towards, I want to do a strain that, say, I have, someone in particular that has benefited particularly from, as opposed to,
that happens.
The analytics are saying that this is strain number 40 because, it literally has the most trending buzz right now.
Being a grower as well, I do my homework, and I do look at the what the medicines are and what benefits people find from the medicines. But obviously, as an artist, I'm looking for a very creative, whatever conjures an image in my head as well. I mean, that can happen. But I have this kind of standard that when I do a strain design, I want to, one, honor the medicine. I want to honor the breeder grower. So in many of the designs, I try to honor that. Well, obviously, with a lot of the crosses that cannot occur, but so and people love what I do. It's kind of like a Where's Waldo? Where's Waldo? Because you'll see, like, for example, I'm looking at my golden goat design. So I have a Romulan ship, in the background here, because that's part of the cross, and then the skunk. So you see a little skunk tail.
Here's that. I think I just found that one. Here's your first one, right?
Story. There's the Girl Scout cookie.
Yeah, this was the first one you did with Mike as well. Is that correct?
This is the first one I did with Farmer Mike. In fact, I didn't even really have the TDOG. You'll see I signed it with my last name, Pearl.
All right.
That's how I had not even come up with the TDOG character yet. And by the way, is it Girl Scout cookies or Girl Scout cookie?
That is a great question. And I bet you would have multiple people tell you different things. And that's, it's interesting because you mentioned, kind of on the growing side. Actually, before I get to that, I had a question that I wanted to get to before you left, because I'm always curious. We have this conversation with a few people here, and I call it the cannabis closet. When you want to work in this industry, and I had someone a long time ago, about 6-7 years ago, not long, about 6-7 years ago, is I was tipping my toes in between both legitimate, and I hate to use that word, but we'll use it, legitimate kind of business world things, what the real world thinks is business, and in the legalized cannabis industry, right? I'm dabbling, kind of like you were creatively. You're doing logos for Fortune 500 companies. But at the time, you probably weren't rocking giant, happy cannabis bud on top of your hat everywhere you go, right? Like, that's not a look you walk into a boardroom when they're like, I want to see an a tire company. And so it's tough to go back and forth, right? The hair and these things, it becomes difficult. So you have to, at some point, go all in, right? You literally put the chips in and you do that. And obviously TDOG, the artist with the long hair and the hat, right? With the, the cannabis vibe all about you and talking about it. Do you feel, more relaxed? Do you feel less pressure to be
Oh, absolutely.
that? I mean, are you finally thankful that that giant bud is off your shoulder, so to speak?
Well, I won't say it's off my back. It's nowhere near off our backs. I think everybody can feel that. But just the huge stride of being able to not have that anxiety. It might be more or less a stigma that you have to deal with, but you don't have that anxiety of, going to jail or anything like that.
Yeah, that guy, I would imagine you're in Michigan. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would imagine in a state like that, and I know you've traveled to California, back to Michigan, in a state like that, to being able to, and you've talked about it, being able to home grow, being able to get into cultivation and not have the fear that you have lived through most of your life has to feel pretty relaxed. We are big fans. I don't know if big fans is the right word.
I want to take this moment to whoever's listening out there, is if you can find, and I'm not saying go out there and wear your cannabis hat everywhere you go. I do not wear this hat really in public other than when I go to cannabis events. One, because people recognize me. TDOG, because they see the hat. But
your brand's important.
Yeah, that story's a great story. My brother got me this guy. I've been trying to find the artist and I can't find him. If anybody who's watching from Amsterdam, this was bought in Amsterdam about 15 years ago. My brother and his wife went into a shop, got very high, came out, he bought the thing, and they couldn't find their hotel room. They were so high.
I think we've all been there, unfortunately, for that.
I couldn't get back to the hotel, right? So it took, they finally did, obviously, but that's the story of this hat. But no, but what I want to say to the people is to this whole thing, I do have a little bone to pick about, legalization, because it's just it's legalization. It's not about legalization. It's really about regulation and who can play and who can't play, sort of. It's what's going on. It's not, I really want people to, I felt that it should have been normalization, or even the first one would be decriminalization, normalization, then go ahead and legalize it. Don't, why do you have to legalize it so quickly? Because the people in the powers that be, obviously want to jump in and take over what the trailblazers have brought to be and, convoluted into just a commodity,
I know BC definitely is a decriminalization first.
Well, I think it's not decriminalization. I think, let me hear your opinion on this, T-Dog. I think the best way for the country to just move on and get cannabis normalized, in my opinion, is is not federal legalization. It is just simply descheduling it from Schedule 1, put it on Schedule 3,
exactly.
Let the states do what they're doing, because the reality is, let's take a state like Michigan or an OG state like Colorado, Washington, California, which did $6 billion last year. I'm going to legalize it and then say, I know California, you have a successful program, but let me tell you the rules. You don't want someone coming in. You already have a bunch of rules and regulations in Michigan that you may like or not like. There are probably some good, some bad, but you know them. You don't want another set of freaking rules on top of that. So,
they're trying to do that. All the municipalities are trying to.
We have obviously that, but I think the federal government wants no part of legalization because it's complicated. So simply deschedule and then let the states do what they want to do. And then that would ease some of the state-to-state exportation laws, which make it difficult. And then let's move forward. I mean, I think that's the way to go. So it's not that I'm obviously decriminalization.
And let the businesses put their money in the bank and let universities and colleges study it more freely. And
which all comes from Schedule 3. You put it on Schedule 3, all of that happens. And that's also very, I don't want to say simple to do, but it's way simpler than federal legalization. Because we already have.
Too bad Joe Biden doesn't smoke weed.
Yeah, right. I mean, so it's where
he's a little too old. He was a little too old.
No, exactly. He just hit that cusp.
Just missed it.
I know. I want to go back to like the origin. Sorry. You mentioned, we literally got to talk for only a couple minutes before all this.
Wait, 1 second. I'm going to be gone 15 seconds. I got to just turn off some noise.
That's what happens. Live shows every Friday, Wayward Media, because cannabis. You never know what's going to happen, right? We live in a cannabis world, and cannabis world is full of eccentrics.
All right, go again. I'm sorry about that. Say that one more time.
we got to talk, you know, a little bit before the show. And you mentioned, you know, back in Hollywood and kind of, you know, like where things all began in not just, you know, this industry, but just in general for you. You know, I want to kind of go back to some of that origin and kind of hear, you know, like before the cannabis industry, you know, how long did it really take you before you finally said, I only want to work with the clients I want to work with? Or, you know, like was the journey more, you
Well,
know, nuanced,
I
or at the
I
beach?
think, yeah. Well, I moved out to Cali from Michigan when I was 21 years old. I ended up in Los Angeles. I ended up in Santa Cruz, and I went down to LA because in Santa Cruz at the time, the only way you could make a living was either building boats or growing weed. Those were your two job options in Santa Cruz. And being the artist, I said, okay. And I hitchhiked down to Los Angeles, and I ended up in LA for close to 20 years. But I built my career in the music industry, designing. I mean, I was one of the top independent designers doing stuff I didn't do album covers, which was smart because album covers are micromanaged by the artists and the managers and all that. I got to design the ads that went in Billboard magazine, went in all the trades, and
Okay.
they couldn't say a word because the things had to be done each week, you know. And I got to design mostly these ads. I designed the first debut ad for Snoop Doggy Dogg when he was Snoop Doggy Dogg for Doggy Style in Billboard magazine. So
That's so awesome.
so yeah, like my world's been I've been consuming cannabis since I was 14 years old. So I don't want to admit this, everybody, but I've been smoking weed for 50 years.
That's a long time. That is just a long time. Not to be me, it's just a long time. I mean, I'm 50 years old, so I get it. But I have probably only been consuming for like 8 or 9 years, right? I'm a later in life advocate, and so but we see a lot of people who are from the old school, and that's just like that's a long time for anything. My parents have been married 50 years. That's a long time.
But I got to say this and I've said this to my brother. It's not like I was part of the cannabis industry. I was just more a part of the cannabis community because I was in the music, the music industry. So it was always there. My studio was at the Village Recorder in West Los Angeles. It's one of the top independent recording studios. So I mean, I got to hang out in the recording studio and smoke weed with the sound engineers and some of the artists as well. I won't drop too many names, but it was just part of my culture and my lifestyle. But it remained in the closet, especially back then, because I mean, I remember how if you got pulled over and you had weed,
Yeah, and I mean, even though yes, and in a lot of states that you were seeing some of the really horror stories of life in prison for very small amounts, or having 3 seeds and having 3 years for 3 seeds, or there were horror stories that throughout the whole history. Gosh, California's bright, beautiful, and the perfect place to blaze. And I keep thinking, Michigan, is it love? Love had to bring you back to Michigan.
I did. I went to my 20th high school reunion and reunited with my high school crush. And I'm telling you, women all do it every time. But the good news was I get back to Michigan, and then Michigan goes legal. So that was perfect.
That is good timing. I'm curious, when you're in the studio, right? So I'm always picturing that. You talk about how cannabis, and you're in the days when it is illegal and people are very nervous, but you're also in like this creative environment, and you have these, like famous people and artists. Do they get weird about it? Like, is it just break it out? Does someone like look around their shoulder? Are they nervous about the police, or do they not give a shit? Do they just go? I'm just curious, like in that moment, what's it like? Take me behind the scenes.
Well, no, I think that, it's being in a town like Los Angeles in the 80s and 90s. I mean, it was like, I remember when I got my job at Radio and Records, which is it was like second to Billboard. It was one of the top weekly trades. And I was an illustrator designer for this publication. That's how I developed doing ads for the record companies, and then I went on to have my own design firm, which was very cool. But I'll never forget going into the office, the president and owner of Radio and Records. I'll mention his name, Bob Wilson. So I go into his office, and he pulls out a big tray, and he starts rolling a big old blunt right there. My first day on the job. And but my supervisor, he went like this. He goes, it's like a litmus test. It was like a litmus test. I said, no. So I did. But right after that, my entire life, it was a weekly publication, but we would go to the dark room. Okay, guys, you ready? And we'd go to the dark room, because that's, in the old days, it wasn't digital, and you still had to shoot photos for the newspaper and all that. We'd go to the dark room, and 5 of us would be in there blazing. So if anybody wanted to smoke dope, they'd go to the art department and go to the dark room.
It is the weather, man. I don't know. It must be just the warm weather. It does. You're all right, Dustin. There is something about like the warm weather and feeling relaxed and enjoying a strain. It's even nicer, both of us, we're in Ohio and you are in Michigan. Like, it's a warm day. I'd imagine it's pretty warm here. You have similar weather, but we've had a cold, miserable time this last early part of 2022, and it doesn't feel as fun. And so it feels less like a chance to smoke and enjoy. When it's warm and it's nice.
I'm sorry.
Those two go together.
State. You should be like the top cannabis state. Ohio. Come on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right in the middle of the name. I'm always fascinated. By the way, I have a question. When you were back hitting the grind, is like Todd Pearl. We all have things, and I am someone, and Dustin as well. Like, we're creative people, and we do a lot of different things. There are shit gigs, for lack of a better term. And so I'd imagine for you, and that freelance artist, like, I do a lot of DJing, I do a lot of stand-up comedy, I do a lot of public speaking. I've been in front of some terrible rooms that have made me feel threatened or just worse. I've had some things thrown at me. I've had things happen that are mentally up here. Have you had, I'm just fascinated by shit gigs, low pay, awkward moments. Have you had a drawing gig go terribly bad for you? Do you have something that stands out?
You mean an art gig, like a commission job?
Sure, anything. And just anything go bad, because to do the grind in your world, in that creative world, like, you dip your toes in so many things, right? Especially early on. Right, early on, it's all draw or whatever your skill is for pretty much anyone, right? Low thing. I've acted in some terrible films, or maybe not. Maybe it's just me.
No. I'm trying to think. Well, there's times where have I not been paid?
No, that's irregular. That's expected for doing this type of world.
Right.
Times you get stiff. That's just a fact of
what?
working in
Pay
creative
for art?
Well, and what you and what you do takes a lot of time. People look at the finished product and they think, oh, I know, they kind of estimate in their head what it took. And the truth is
bingo.
Like,
because
you put in, like, when you woke up in the morning and were eating your breakfast, you were thinking about their brand. When you were showering, you were thinking about their brand. When you were playing catch with the kids, you were thinking about their brand. You get in front of a piece of paper and you have 7 sketches that just don't feel right. And and it's just this, it's a whole process.
Right. I mean, that's, I think that's always been the stigma with being an artist too, is whether you're a musician, probably if you're a songwriter or an artist like myself, is that everybody thinks, well, you're doing what you love. So that somehow relates to that it's not work or something.
It doesn't take a while, right?
Here's the worst phrase ever, in my opinion, for exposure. For exposure.
The hair,
you know what's going to happen? We're all creative people who have done creative gigs, which means at some point someone's wanted you to do it, because if you do this for free, someone else may see you and may pay you down the road. I'm like, no, you fucking pay me. For exposure, by the way, that's the death knell to me. As soon as I see that, I don't even reply. I'm like, no, thank you.
Well, so when people come to me and they ask me how much.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's a common question for sure. Like, especially an upcoming brand, a startup, they want to make a name in the cannabis industry. You got a unique style. Right. They want TDOG, the artist, to sign it. So yes, I would imagine on a regular, how much, TDOG? So yeah, what do we say?
It's, and it's so difficult to put a price on it. I say to people, it depends. It depends on what is your intent. What is it? What's the ultimate goal you're looking for? I look at the whole thing, but then again, I say, and I use this term, I learned it from some enlightenment coach I learned from a while ago. Oh, is an exchange of equivalent value.
Yes.
I like that.
Exchange of equivalent value. So, okay, maybe you're not going to pay me with cash, but what are you going to pay me with?
Absolutely.
Yes. More than exposure, because
And that
exposure is
could
not
be,
guaranteed.
and that really can be anything from how easy they are to work with. I mean, like, it could just be like, you know, when I put out
Oh,
something, there's not
exactly.
7 different checks on it. They accept it for what it is. They know that they see the, you know, like, yes.
I even say to the people, I say, listen, part of that exchange of equivalent value is, do you need it now? Because if I have some time to work on it and I'm not having to, you know, make it a priority and have to move everything else around, then maybe we can still work together. And so then I think about that. I go, all right, I'll tell you what. And I work with people because a lot of them are startups and they don't have a lot of cash. So I say, all right, let's, you know, make a commitment. So give me some cash, you know, and oh, here's the other thing I do with I've done it with everybody. Sure, I can have my reputation and say, this is how much it's going to cost you, send me a deposit. I never do that. I will always have a conversation with you. I will always get a thought of what you want. And I will take a nice little bong hit and work 10 minutes on it if I have an idea for it. It's because my brain works that way. And then I present my proposal with a sketch. So you're getting something, so you know you're not just jumping in something blind.
I'm curious. You have, a unique vibe about you, unique style, right? There's a style to your artwork that is similar. You can see the lines. You can see that it, comes from TDOG the artist, right? It's something you went so far, you trademarked your name. But I have to imagine, and this comes up all the time with artwork, there are people who either really mimic the style and or simply use your work, right, without copyright and those types of things. Is that hard? Do you get frustrated? Do you go after it? Have you learned to just ignore
I don't
that?
even
What's
think
it been
about
like?
it.
And
I don't even think
not
about
anymore,
it
huh?
because the way the world is now, geez, come on. I mean, what?
You probably waste a lot of time trying to get every single internet user who used your image. I mean, it's one thing if the brand becomes
Here's
big
what I
and
want.
huge.
Here's what I want. I want somebody. I need clones of me to do all that other stuff. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, you don't have time to do it. You don't have time.
Because I'm spending my time drawing and doing
Right.
whatever. There's only so much time in the day, and I want to do what I love to do. And yes, of course, I want to. There is this protecting your, the intellectual property to a certain degree, but.
It is. It's a whole nother war. I mean, it really is. You've already battled this coming out of the industry war of just being allowed to do the work you want to do, smoking while you do it, having it be acceptable,
openly
and
talking
now,
about it.
and now you're talking, let's start a whole nother war about, yeah, I couldn't imagine. I really think that, I guess you do work with new technology though. I mean, you are.
Oh, and now I've got to wrap my head around the whole NFT. I'm working on that.
And that's, and I, BC hates the,
I'm not an NFT fan.
I think
you
about
guys talk
blockchain
NFT,
and
I'll
stuff.
Drink some
but
coffee.
At the end of the day, when I think about you and your artwork and your legacy down the line, the first thing that my stomach wants to jump to is Web3 and NFTs. And how do we preserve this in time forever and have clarifications for anyone else down the line? Whether or not they can use the image for free doesn't matter. I want them to know TDOG fucking wrote this, made this, created this, painted this, whatever the hell it is. And here's the timestamp. Here's the date. If you want to give his family a donation because you're using it in a commercial or a TV.
Oh, there's so many
T-shirt or something.
I'm loving the possibilities of this. I really am. I mean, I'm working. Well, you guys can check out Cali DAO. I'm a co-founder of the Cali DAO. The decentralized autonomous organization.
Correct. Yeah. So Cali DAO, what's Cali DAO technically do then?
Well, it's really to promote a part of what is important to all of us, because Mendo Dope is our co-founders as well. It's about protecting the grower, the caregiver. It really is about this doing it right as we go forward. It's about don't touch my tomatoes. I've got 20 patients that I've been helping for the last 20 years, and now you're coming into my world telling me how much square footage I can grow in and how many plants I can grow. I mean, give me a freaking break, people.
So is that it? It's like the man coming down and saying what can and can't be done, as opposed to, say, corporations stealing the work, the trail that you've already blazed. You know, is it that like these strains are being stolen from them, or is it more so that the rules and regulations are
right? It's more just the corporate powers that be that are swooping in and trying to just take over this whole thing.
It is
interesting.
interesting.
They did it they did it with the alcohol, and they're going to do it they're trying to do it with this. At the end of the day, yes, there will be niche companies that will survive, but I'm sad to say that, probably 85% of all the growers out there are going to end up working for a corporate weed place.
Well, would you still feel the same way if you were head of one of these corporations within the industry?
Guess what? I'm not announcing anything official today, but people have been left and right telling me that I should get my name as a brand, like a Tommy Chong or whatever.
Sure.
And that where I can and then I can keep my friends who are thriving, and this is their livelihood, and are struggling so much with the regulation and everything. And maybe I can create something where they can continue to do what they do under the auspices of my brand.
Yeah.
It is interesting. We have that, and I wanted to talk. That's what I was trying to talk a little bit more about, the cannabis and the growing. Got a lot about the marketing stuff, but it is interesting. And you said a lot of people, and we meet people, and I meet a lot of people who are trying to get into the industry, into the cannabis industry in one of my jobs. And so a lot of them want to get into ownership, but the reality is most of them, and I tell them this openly, but most of them will simply work for a bigger conglomerate, because to get into the ownership, it is difficult. It takes a lot of money. Now, states like Michigan,
just
and
the
micro
licenses
licensing
alone, right?
Yeah, so it's very difficult to do that. Do you feel, and in your experience, you have this, is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing to work for the corporation, to work for the big conglomerate, grower, to work for Curaleaf or something like that? Or
I don't want to just paint wide stroke. If it's a good organization,
Are you excited then for the micro grows in your state, where you have these, and now that accessibility to the micro grow has actually dropped in cost and stuff like that? It's $6,000 for the license for each one, or so, instead of $60,000. You only need.
But then everybody's having to change their mindset, which I have a client out in Oklahoma right now who was hoping to be just a farmer and providing the product. And now he's bought a brick and mortar store because he's done with it. He's going to just sell his product out of his own store.
Yeah.
And that's great, because he can own that. But the only way he's going to make the money he was planning to make is he's going to have to open up more stores.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to become like a dispensary thing. And it's a whole different business than what he's been doing for the last X amount of years, and all the employee training that he's used to doing. And then it's a whole different logistics thing on how to retain a retail employee, as how to retain someone who's, it's a whole nother world. It's a whole set of new hats you're putting on all the time. Right. So I guess what I'm trying to tell everybody, because it's just, we've got to keep our heads up. It's kind of like going down the river, the rapids. You got to keep rowing, but you also got to keep your head up, knowing where you're going. So just don't grind and not know where you're going. But I just want to tell everybody to keep the faith and just, be smart and plan it out right. It's because it's tough. I think it's really tough right now, especially for the smaller businesses.
It is weird. We have states, we are, not know if we're a big fan of Oklahoma, but just Oklahoma's story and the crazy Wild West and the lack of legislation that they kind of had, which led to a big movement, but now it's trying to be regulated after it's all exploded, which is difficult, versus what states like Ohio does, was where we regulate heavy in the beginning and then everyone kind of comes along. It's just
maybe you're doing it right. You might be. I mean, like you say, time will tell.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, and I'm always curious to see. And I like the idea. I mean, Dustin and I clearly, Dustin, you know your numbers there. Someone might be looking into something. Micro licensing in Michigan and stuff. Know those numbers, right? We're so close to that state. That's something we all pay attention to, right? Michigan has released the moratorium on out-of-state residents having ownership of cannabis as of December of 21. So now it's open. So it's an interesting thing to do. The micro license is interesting. But I'm curious, just like as that cultivator, does this all excite you, or do you wish it could just be let me grow my medicine for my people and get out of my business? Like I'm like, where do you sit as a cultivator?
My true thing is, and I espouse this, is that if I could have my druthers, I just wish it could just be decriminalized, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Just let us grow our tomatoes. You know, obviously it would change everything now because it's now big business. It's not just the guy growing the weed in his backyard anymore. So
I think it can be though. Here's in my vision how this works, right? It is tomatoes, example, right? So you have tomatoes which are grown and mass produced in the grocery store that I can go buy. So
what if I took those tomatoes to the school and people were eating my tomatoes?
Well, that's the whole weird thing, and that's where it gets weird about this particular product is the farmers market. The kind of vibe, I think, and you're already seeing some states toy with this, Oregon and Washington, will be the next evolution. Because like tomatoes, I should be able to grow them in my yard and sell them to you if you would like, or I can grow 1,000 billion tomatoes at one point and sell them to Kroger's and Acme and whatever grocery stores you have. So we have both, right? Tomatoes.
It's a non-toxic I want to get to what it is. It's the distinction of what it is. It's not. It's weed. It's not tobacco. Well, yeah. I guess there is an active ingredient in weed. I get it. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, if we lifted the schedule, we'd know more about the reality of how good it is, how the endocannabinoids and the brain receptors and how it all works. It's been in our DNA forever, and then they took it out of our DNA 100 years ago because of misinformation, saying it was an evil drug.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the story, kind of? Because I had a friend who wrote for the LA Times about how weed became.
I'm pretty familiar with it, but I'm always up to talk about those days.
Well, my understanding,
Henry Anslinger, I'm all down with that.
I want to get this out here, and then if anybody can debunk it, fine. And I didn't, because I trust the source. This was a writer for the Los Angeles Times. He's now retired. He actually wrote a huge expose on Jack Herrera back in the 90s. He met Jack Herrera. It's great. That's all that kind of stuff. But what he educated me was, near the turn of the century, paper was made from hemp.
Mm-hmm.
And DuPont, allegedly, I'm going to say that company, developed a dioxin. And the dioxin they were able to make paper out of wood. But the problem they were having was they couldn't get the paper white. And so then they made the paper, So long story short was DuPont could corner the market on making paper. But what did they have to do? They had to eliminate the competition, which was hemp.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when the whole disinformation, evil weed campaign started.
Yeah, no, the paper mills for sure were a big part of it. There was a lot of like racist connotations as well, like the evilness that it makes people do, right? It was just a lot of bad misinformation that obviously, I think
and then it just dominoed.
And it is now generational, right? It's hard to come out of, and that's where we're at right now, right? We're trying to come out of this. It's this evil thing, we're talking about. You were referencing like the endocannabinoid system and how it's built in us. We have two CB receptors in our body designed to interact with the psychotropic parts of cannabis.
They get happy.
To do that, I'll always shout out, by the way, CBD Nation, great film on Amazon Prime. David Yakubovich, friend of the show. We'll get him back on here.
Oh wait, what's on it? I didn't hear
CBD Nation on Amazon Prime. We've had a chance to talk with David Yakubovich, the director of that film.
Oh,
great film that talks about the birth of CBD and the rise of that. But just a little shout out for David's film. Check it out. I want to, before we let you go, You know, I want to talk a little bit just about cultivars and strains because I love that you're so knowledgeable about them and you think about them. But before that, before we hit record on the show, everyone, you know, we were just talking as, you know, chatting with Todd. I was trying to get stuck between Todd and T-Dog, and it got weirdly. So we were chatting with Todd, you know, talking about being a big fan. Right? Yeah, it's not, by the way, T-Dog, the artist, Dustin. It's T to the D to the mother loving OG. Get that right all the time.
You got to say it with emphasis, bro.
All right, T to the D to the mother loving OG.
There it is.
Right, that's what we're trying to do.
Now I'm hungry.
I'm feeling it, right?
Yeah.
I like that T-Dog, the artist, is a fan of the bud. So, Dustin, I had this realization while you were like peeing before we went live on the air. We market cannabis is the leaf, something that's never really consumed or used, and typically up until maybe recent times was just thrown away, or if nothing else, composted back. Todd is an advocate of the bud, which is the product we consume. Is it because the bud is less attractive or doesn't fill a space? Like, why is the leaf the marketing symbol of cannabis and not the
it's
bud?
just more iconic. It's
Might
just more
be,
iconic. But I think those who know what
those
this
who know. So give me some cultivar knowledge, Todd.
Someone say, what is that? Corn? Is that corn?
It does look like corn. It looks like asparagus.
Yes, it is, sir.
Give me some favorite strains. Let's talk cultivar strains, like stuff you're growing. Like what's that? You talked about green crack. You thought fired up the kind of synapses and gave you a creative flow. I'm just a fan of what you grow, like what you like. I always love to pick cultivators' brains.
Well, I'll tell you something, and I learned this from DJ Short, one of the great breeder growers of our cannabis medicine blueberry strain. But I've listened to him a lot, and I'm going to use his little distinction is that, you know, sativa indicas, and you go, I like sativas, I like indicas. It really is a matter of each medicine and what it tastes like and what its effect is. Mm-hmm. That's what I think it's all about. I mean,
so you're a terpene, like you don't even care
about
percentages. You don't
necessarily. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love the hazes, and then I can go for, you know, the purple Afghani. I mean, it's just it's each individual. It's sort of like food. I mean, you don't like all Italian. You know, there's going to be good Italian, bad Italian.
I mean, the second I had my medical card and was able to choose between the different strains, the second my usage, my actual consumption amount dropped in half. Having the strains for certain ailments, for certain times, to being able to, you know, to tell the story ahead of time of what's about to happen to me as a patient was huge. Yeah.
Do you guys, I mean, do you guys consume? Do you dab? Do you burn? Do you smoke?
Well, that's an interesting debate. We've had this kind of before. I tend to roll, like I'm a flower person, right? I tend to like flower. I tend to consume mostly in paper. And I actually don't often like the oil carts and such. I don't mind, but I don't like the way they affect my lungs. I feel tightness. But a nice dab every once in a while, I don't think is something. However, we had this conversation before. Chasing that first dab is impossible. Right. Like, it's such a crazy feeling the first time you try it that it feels weird. Plus, it's too much work. I'm a simple man, T-Dog the artist. I don't need an apparatus and a heating element and three things and the oil. It's too much. Like, I have so much OCD and ADD.
Don't tell the real truth.
It's too much effort. So that's simple.
There you go.
To me. So all the rest
not
is
me.
good.
I am the complicated.
Well,
yes,
you're a glass fan. Like, you're all.
I owned a head shop, a very high-end gallery of American artwork, you know, and so like the American art
I'm
industry
very much
in terms
into the glass.
Very much. Oh my gosh!
Well, then we're gonna have a separate show where me and you are gonna
act. Then we can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fan of it. I don't own a bunch of glass, but I am a huge fan of it and the art aspect of it. And look at that. Talk about communities coming together. That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I had the pleasure of
promote.
Oh yeah, please.
And we should have maybe talked a little more about this.
Two Strokes, I think.
Farms. I'm doing the artwork for this. This was the last event, Cashmere Clouds, but we're going to have the Mendo and the Mitten event, and it's in Jones, Michigan. But what I love about this is in Southwest Michigan. This festival and just the passion and love behind it, and the fact that it's only like 10 miles north of the Indiana border. So it's really wonderful because we're getting Ohio, Indiana people coming up to this festival and, and celebrating the medicine.
And we're going to put that link for that event in the.
So this was the
comments
last one,
below.
which was a big success. This was a couple weeks ago, and then June 3rd through the 5th is Mendo and the Mitten, and my buddies, the Mendo Dope Boys, are flying in and performing at the event from Cali.
I feel we got to. I don't know if we can make the June 3rd, 4th, and 5th, Todd, but I think we definitely need a road trip. I feel like you are close
But
enough.
there's July too, Fire in the Sky. That's going to be in July, and then we're going to have another one in September. So we'll be talking.
I feel like we're going to Michigan here soon, Dustin.
You know what? I'm actually was just looking up the
show
address
with Todd. I want to sit live with Todd. I want to be in a state that's legal. I want to enjoy and then record and see what the hell happens. Because I think an hour of live in with Todd is a whole different show. I think it's a whole different show that we go down a whole different path.
Let's do it.
I'm loving it. I feel like
are we allowed to smoke on the show?
You can. Dustin can. I technically can.
I can vape. In Ohio, you're not allowed to combust.
No, would you rather me not?
No, it doesn't matter. You could do whatever the fuck you want.
Blunt, this lady from
I
Canada.
I could just say it's clove cigarette.
No, you don't have to do it. No, we had we've had a couple guests, including, like I said, the woman from
You've
Canada,
earned the
Kelly
right
Addison.
to do whatever the hell
she
you want.
lit up huge. That's how she went out on our show. Just a giant rip.
Just a big cloud.
Oh, she just went in style. She also visited us live from Dispensary on April 20th as well. She's Reverend Kelly Addison. She's a good one. Todd, it has been. We'll let Todd end the show. You can take a rip here to end the show. Oh, we got a little Homer. Is that a Homer? There's a lot happening in Todd's world. I think we definitely, what's your strain with the Z, WATZ, your strain? As Dustin said, we'll put the links to some of the events
and also
that Todd's got
Tokes.
going on.
My apparel line, twotokes.com.
Oh, that's what yes.
And there was there's probably about, I saw at least 10 different shirts with the different strains up there with them. I
got too many links. I got to have a one-stop place.
And we might
so
be
I'm trying to figure that out. Maybe we can talk, Dustin, but I'm trying to figure that out.
Job. The website designer, Two Tokes, those shirts. All right, so everyone we'll put the link in the number 2, TOKES.com, twotokes.com. There are some badass shirts on here. It looks like I got to break out the credit card after the show.
And you know what? It was really crazy because the whole thing of Two Tokes is puff, puff, pass. And it was like, as I was breaking this out, by the way, the pandemic did take a hit on my whole process because my printer was in California. So we're kind of one step back, 2 steps forward, but we're getting back up to gear. And but the Two Tokes, puff puff pass with the pandemic wasn't a very popular.
I didn't even think about that.
It was the death of the puff puff pass. It was the puff puff get the hell away from me. Puff puff get your own.
Funny.
But now I actually, I still have. I was with someone the other day. It's still a little weird. I still do a double take. Like I wanted to say, "Are you sick?" And I've never asked that before, but I'm like, "You have a cold or something?" Like it was a weird moment. I'm still not as communal with that. I prefer if I go somewhere and someone.
But even if you are, you're still in your head thinking about it. So
yes, for sure. No, but you go ahead.
I never thought I was harming someone passing it. Now I feel like I could. And
you're like, if I have the sniffles, should I? So twotokes.com, we'll put that website link in there. Todd's going to take a big rip to go. Todd's got all sorts of apparatuses going on right now in his brain. Todd Pearl, TDOG, the artist, what's your strain? I think toddpearl.com. You do got to find a centralized hub there, Todd Pearl. You should email Dustin after the show.
What is I know there's an app where it shows all your connections. That's what I got.
I don't know. That is not me.
We will talk with
Dustin after the show. I'll send you an email. That's his job. That's what he does on the side. In addition to being a fantastic host on Wayward Media.
Guys, you were great. It's just I could
thank you.
Talk with you anytime. So let's do it again.
We're for sure coming again, and I'm serious. We're taking a road trip, maybe in September. Head up there. All right, Todd Pearl, T-Dog the artist. Thank you for joining us.
Say hi to 70s Mama for me.
We will. Oh, yes. 70s Mama, Lisa's Werner on there as well. We got to get Bubble Hash on here. We had a bunch of people. All right. Thank you very much, Todd, for joining the show.
Thanks, man.
We'll talk later. All right. Take care.
Peace.